Hey there, Ideal Protein Nation and worldwide. We are speaking to the world today. I'm so excited, and I'm still wearing my glasses, right? So excited because we are taking the show truly international today. We've got a lot to talk about, and we've been working right up until the minute that I press the button here. For those of you who don't know yet and who are being introduced to the podcast for the first time, the Life Possible podcast spotlights successful clients, coaches, and clinic owners who have used the Ideal Protein protocol to reset their body, reset their mind, and reset possible. Now, these individuals truly have had life-changing experiences, and as a result, they're pursuing goals and dreams they thought were dead and gone. They're pursuing goals and dreams they never thought they could. Some of them are pursuing goals and dreams they never even thought about before and are trying for the first time. They're busy living a life so much they don't feel the need to escape from it. They are living a life that is so precious to them that they can't imagine going back to the way that they were before. Who am I? I am Dr. John Barnes, and I will tell you that 5 years ago, the Ideal Protein program was a gift, an answer to prayers from God for me that transformed my life, both personally and professionally. 5 years ago, there's no two ways about it. I was fat, sick, and depressed. I started the Ideal Protein protocol. I lost 45 pounds. That transformed my life, and I became healthy, vibrant, and alive. Today, after 5 years of research and going down the rabbit hole and learning as much as I can, I understand that the power of this protocol is more what it does for us on the inside than anything it does on the outside. And so it's my mission to spread the word about the power of this protocol worldwide like we're doing today. And in fact, today with our guest, we are going to truly get this word about the power of the protocol and what it can do out there. I'm over 60 pounds down now, and I am actually participating, training, and racing in the sport of triathlon after 25 years of inactivity. So like I said, truly, this has been a life-changing experience for me. Let's move on. I want to show you our featured guest today. Our featured guest today is Melissa Hozack. She is a pharmacist in Alberta, Canada. We're going to Redcliffe, Alberta, Canada to spend time with her. I truly think she's the hardest working pharmacist in Ideal Protein. And if anybody knows anybody else, please comment below. But I don't think you're going to find anybody that works as hard than she does. She is a prescribing pharmacist, and 7 years ago, she lost over 100 pounds doing the Ideal Protein program. The coolest thing I think about her story, when I think about guests for this show, she was the successful client. She was the successful coach because, in fact, as we're going to hear, she coached herself through the protocol. And she's been a successful clinic owner in that she brought Ideal Protein into her pharmacy. And that is the side of the clinic now that she is solely working out of. So just an amazing story. And she is client, coach, and clinic owner. Over the past 7 years, her pharmacy has helped over 1,000 patients lose over 40,000 pounds. She has given numerous national and international presentations on therapeutic nutrition. She loves what she does. She is not dispensing medications as much, but in fact, de-prescribing them as she helps her clients get healthy. She's now known as the pharmacist who prescribes food as medicine. And in addition to all of that, the more I get to know her and about her husband and family, she and her husband are actually part owners in a microbrewery, a successful microbrewery where they live in nearby Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada. Travois. I think I got that right. Now, I truly want to, at some point when this pandemic is over, I need to go visit them. So let me, without any further ado, bring out Melissa Hozack. Hey, how are you, Melissa?
Hey, great. That's quite the introduction. Thank you.
Well, you are quite the lady. I got to tell you, I've been so happy, and it's been so much fun to be Facebook friends.
Yes, definitely.
My Ideal Protein Facebook friend group exploded a couple years ago when I went to the Dallas convention and met so many more people. And so I've got friends like you that I haven't met yet, and it's just been
That's
so
right.
exciting.
In time we will, for sure. I was going to show you my wall here. First of all, I've got my Welcome John sign. We're actually
Oh,
in
thank
my
you.
we're in my consultation room right now, actually, where all the magic happens anyway. So we actually
And
had
tell me about that wall. Yeah.
our local painter was a client of ours, and I had her, create something to be able to hang all our signs on them here. So as clients hit their, their 10, 20, 30, all the way up to 150, I think is my highest sign I've got. As they hit those pounds lost, then I get to sign the board, and we take a picture and celebrate all those glories as they are. But I wanted to point out, though, you said we hit 40,000 pounds, but actually
Yeah.
that was old numbers. So since the COVID lockdown happened, we've lost another 2,000 pounds. So I think just today we hit 43,000 pounds lost. So
I'm
it's
sorry. I'm
been,
sorry. We got to slow up because you were going so fast.
oh, sorry.
Since the lockdown,
Since the lockdown,
your
so
clinic has lost how many pounds?
22 weeks is 2,000 pounds. So our
Oh,
dieters have been rocking it. Let me tell you, they've been doing awesome. We've been running the
wow.
Summer Survivor program, and we have two tribes basically competing against each other. It has been amazing. They've been doing so well. It's been
Yeah,
fun. Yeah, it's
that
been
was
really good.
a promotion that you were showing us on Facebook in our clinic owners groups and things, and
Yes,
just what an incredible promotion that was. Like I said,
absolutely.
that is where I put you in the category of hardest working pharmacist, clinic owner, coach,
Well,
because
thanks. We try.
the promotions that I keep seeing are unbelievable.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and I do say we because my husband's a pharmacist as well too, Rob. So a lot of it is teamwork that way, and he runs the dispensary side, and I run the Ideal Protein side. So
what a team!
it's been amazing, and we've been doing that now since 2013, since we brought the program in. So I can tell you
That
about
is
that if you like.
absolutely amazing. Yeah.
So
So,
we
what I want to do real quick first, yeah, we'll get to that. But what I want to do real quick first is I want to get to your own personal amazing transformation, because
For
that's part
sure.
of, right. That's part of
That's
the
a big
story.
part of it. Yeah, definitely. So going back, even before this first picture that you see here, anyway, I was always an athlete growing up. I was always a very big carb lover. I had been known to, have 4 pieces of toast with sugar in the morning, sort of thing, which I can't even imagine at this point now. But I played college basketball and soccer. So I ate a lot of calories to be able to fuel 4 hours of practices and games and everything every day like that. Move into university, going to pharmacy school at University of Alberta. Met my to-be husband in my class there as well. And, we got married. And I think even by the time we got married, I was probably sitting about 30 pounds heavier than where I am now even. So as we
Okay.
got going, you go through university, they say, the college 15 or whatever the numbers are. Mine got to be more and more than that. And then, fast forward a few more years, had 3 kids. I think my top number was about 265 pounds. And at that point, I didn't have the fat, sick, depressed part, but I was definitely fat, sick, and inflamed. That was my big thing, is that
Mm.
inflammation just got to me. So much that I thought I had arthritis. I actually get a Baker's cyst behind one knee. I've got terrible asthma and allergies, acne, GI problems, everything inflammation, everything itis out there.
I was going to
Had it.
say, I
Yeah.
had a lot of that stuff too. I stopped the list at Fat, Sick, and
Yeah,
Depressed
there's a
because,
lot of it happening. So of
yes,
course,
we
what did
share
I
a lot of the
do?
same.
Thinking that athlete mind that I had from growing up, right? Working out was always good for me that way. I thought I'll start running. So starting running, and when I was 265 pounds, was probably the worst thing I could do. I was really inflamed at that point. Like we say, you can't outrun a bad diet. You just can't do it that way. I
We
had
could
actually
actually, and you
gained
know what?
weight at the end of the week.
We could
So
actually do a whole show on that topic too, right?
absolutely. That'll be number 13, something like that down the road. But it's true. So anyways, as I got looking at it, I was looking at something I was needing for myself, because obviously that wasn't working. My doctor didn't have much for me, basically said like diet and exercise. As we know, that's what we were taught in pharmacy school as well. And I had a friend, actually it was another Pharmasave owner not too far down the road from us, that said, maybe you should look at Ideal Protein. I've been doing it for a little bit and clients are successful. So it was April 20th. I called up my regional consultant and said, hey, I want to meet with you. I'm going to be in Calgary this weekend. It's about a 3-hour drive. So we were going for a national Pharmacist conference and said, I want to meet with you. So met with her and she was talking about a couple of things. I just sat back and went like, this just makes sense. I'm like, I have all those things you just listed. I have the insulin resistance. I have the inflammation. I'm like, this makes sense. I could do this and come back to work and, do a couple hours a week kind of thing was my goal, because I had a third child at home now too. So
Wow.
I thought, well, let's try Ideal Protein and see what it looks like. So, but I was so convinced and I was like all in at that point where I'm like, I was put here to do something. It's kind of what I was thinking. I'm like, I need this for myself. I need this for my patients. I need this for everything. So I actually had it up and running, training, product, everything in my clinic in 10 days from when I heard about the program, which is pretty crazy. I think they had said this was some kind of record even, like, okay, we're going to bring this in, you're going hard at it kind of thing. So yeah, I was the first patient, first client, first coach, because I coached people even through my first year. I want to say, I think we had about 120 clients by the time I hired my first coach at that point.
Yeah.
So it was busy. And it started from one morning a week to a full day, and then 2 days. And then I had to start adding some evenings and weekends because we had consultation rooms. This was actually a built-in room because this was my housewares department at the time in my pharmacy here.
Housewares, I love it. So yeah, again, our stories so very similar, right? And for me, it was, one of the things I like to say that if God had not let me get so far down in that pit, if I hadn't experienced the laundry list of symptoms and actually, I never had problem maintaining weight in the past. I could always, at the drop of a hat, change my diet a little bit, add some exercise, lose the weight, get back to where I wanted to. But if I hadn't gotten to the point of insulin resistance, which is going to be something we're going to talk about a lot today, if I had not experienced insulin resistance for myself, and that's what has made me and you as well go down the rabbit hole so far. We share so many books and references and people.
Sure.
And we're going to talk about some of those people today. But, this is, I think it's absolutely amazing that you've experienced it firsthand. That's why you're so passionate.
I think so, because I know what it was like to be that 265-pound patient. And I love sitting. My very lowest I've actually got to is about 155. And I'm actually on my way down right now. I'm doing protocol again right now to reboot. And I'm going to go a little bit lower than that because I've decided now, even thinking about all of this week again, I'm like, I can do this. I coach this every single day. So sometimes I need that little bit of a boost too. So there you go. You can help me out with it along the way too.
Yeah, and I like to call that next level. People who have they've kind of been in that zone for a while, and they're kind of like, you know what? Let's see what that next level looks like. And I talked about Tracy Gardner, man. Whoo!
Oh, she's awesome.
She took it to next level this year. Have you seen how ripped she is?
She is. I saw her doing those push-ups the other day. I actually told her that this morning too. I'm like, you look so awesome. Like you are ripped, you're toned. You threw out those 22 push-ups like it was nothing. So
yeah, watch out, because I'm sure you're on her list now.
I forgot about that. That's okay. I can do it. I've been doing this with the girls I coach in soccer. Actually, we always wrap up practice with 30 push-ups and 60 sit-ups. So I've been doing those along with them too. So I can do it. I'll get there.
I'm sorry. Answer this for me. Yes. In Canada, are there only 24 hours, or do you guys have more hours?
Oh, I tell you, some days I wish I did, but I don't know. So I coach soccer. That was the other thing I was going to say.
Of course you do.
4 teams normally. COVID times is only 1. And we homeschool our 3 children. So we're busy, but we have fun with it.
I think Canadian time, you guys somehow have like 30 hours. I don't know what the deal is with that.
There you go.
So, again, let's not only did you bring Ideal Protein talk to us a little bit about that whole bringing it into the clinic. Not only did you bring it into the clinic, but other pharmacies started to take notice, right?
Yeah. So with our success of it, and I'd given a few national presentations within Pharmasave and a little bit with Ideal Protein as well. This one was with the Calgary Drug Trends Summit, which is a Canada Health Benefit Summit, something like that. Basically, I think over 300 Pharmasaves, the last count I had heard, had brought Ideal Protein in as well. So
The
Pharmacist.
Ideal Protein must love you. Oh my
I
God.
think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, they've been great for me anyway. I mean, I've got to go to Quebec a couple of times. I visited Pharma Lab where they actually create all the products and the supplements and things, and have a tour around. It was amazing. And see just the high quality product that Ideal Protein is making that way. So that was really great.
Yeah.
And I got to go and visit the home office actually and have a tour around and be the first Chef Variety live event. He's not with company now, but it was
That's,
just amazing to be able to go and do that with them and tour around to meet everybody who's kind of behind the scenes that maybe people don't know
yeah.
about. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
So
been fabulous
cool.
that way. So, but yeah, as far as in our clinic though, with the success of it that way, I mean, we've got, or I've been able to be featured in a lot of things where I get to get the word out there, because I think that's a big thing, is that people still somewhat just don't know that there's a lot of things we can do without having to use all the medications that we do dispense every day. And I think that's where some people go, well, you own a pharmacy, you're a pharmacist, don't you dispense medications? That's what you do. And I'm like,
That's
oh, I've done that
exactly,
for 7 years.
that's where I'm going next. It does seem to me to be a huge conflict of interest, on the surface, right? Tell me too, you have to explain for those in other countries, you're actually a prescribing pharmacist.
Correct. So Alberta, so like the United States have states, we have
Hmm.
the provinces across Canada. So within Alberta, we actually have the most expanded scope of practice you're going to find in the world anywhere. So they've really
Okay.
recognized we have a great College of Pharmacists and RXA that really advocate for us and work with the Alberta government. So within Alberta, then we actually get paid to, which is a good part of it. Obviously, you're getting paid to do some of it, but we can actually get the prescribing authorization, which I did about 3.5 years ago, I think now. So I have prescribing rights, which means I can prescribe new therapy as long as I feel it's within my scope of practice and for what I feel comfortable with. If it's something that I don't feel comfortable with, or it's something I can't run a test for, yes, absolutely, I'm going to send them to their doctor. We're not taking the place of doctors by any means.
Hmm.
We work together
You're,
very well. Yeah,
yeah, actually assisting them.
assisting them. Yeah,
But so
exactly.
you can order blood tests as well?
Yes, so that's another thing.
Wow.
Even here, we can
That's
order blood
great.
tests, and we actually have a great net care system where, through lots of different logins and security, obviously, we can log in and actually check every blood work. If you had a COVID test, even we can look at those. I can
Yep.
check where you've had prescriptions and when, and it's all in real time. So as they're dispensing prescriptions, it actually sends it to net care so that we make sure there's not polypharmacy happening and that kind of thing.
Wow.
So
That's
that
amazing.
yeah. So along with the prescribing, when I was looking at that part of it, because I was already doing Ideal Protein here now for 3.5 years at that point, I needed it to be able to de-prescribe the medications because we see things go so
Gotcha.
quickly. So that was a
Yeah.
big, yeah, it's been fabulous that way. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm here for, I feel like. So
Well, and
fabulous.
Sue, you and I talked about how that's such a personal thing for you, and how where you come from mentally, emotionally, when you are working with clients. Um, and so we talked about one of the biggest things that you want to do. A lot of those clients that come in, they might have been freshly diagnosed, or they might have just been so chronic they they feel like there's no chance for them to change their lives. But you like to give them hope.
Yes, that's the biggest thing. There's so many clients that come to us, and whether they've been diabetic for 10 or 15 years, and that's how they identify now, or it's a brand new person coming in going, my doctor just said I'm pre-diabetic, or I am diabetic, and they have their first prescription for metformin or something. The look in their eyes where it's like, oh, I'm diabetic. Like, what do I do from here, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or the ones that have been for a while. I sit with them for a little bit and hear their story and talk to them, and then talk to them about how it's all becoming an insulin problem. So you start to talk with people and really learn with them. Most of my consults are about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So there's a lot of discussion and figuring out what's going on with people. And
Mhm.
by the time they're done, they leave and they just light up. Like, it gives me shivers to think about it, because there's been so many instances I can think of and so many patients where they're like, I have never felt this positive about anything in my life, to know
Yeah.
that I don't have to be diabetic anymore, or I don't have to have high blood pressure or poke my finger every day anymore, things
Yeah.
like that, where they basically leave in tears of joy because they're so hopeful by the end. So yeah, that, I
That's
mean,
and that's
to be
why
able
we
to
do
talk
what we
like that,
do.
that's why we do it. Exactly. So if I can do that and help people, there's always a place for medications. I'm not saying there isn't. Obviously, we own a pharmacy. That's a big part of it.
Yep.
But there's so much more that we can do. So that's where I feel
Well,
like we can kind of scream from the rooftops and go, hey, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, right? So,
yeah,
no,
again, being known as the pharmacist who prescribes food as medicine, right? I think that's just an incredible persona, if you will.
definitely.
Um,
And that was
so
actually the tagline I used for a Canadian pharmacist presentation I had done a couple of years ago. And basically compared the insulin and glucagon ratios in the body and looking at why, when you're eating lots of carbs, what happens and why are we getting sick? That's the big thing, right? So
yes, we're gonna get into that. Yep, we're gonna
yeah,
talk about that. But again, I think, like you said, there's certainly a place for medications, and you know, you've got the balance. It seems like you're striking the balance for everybody. We got into a discussion of healthcare versus sick care.
I
Would you like to
love
address that a little bit?
I
Yeah.
do, because I would have always said, even going back to high school, I would have said, I want to go into healthcare. I love helping people. I love science and the medicine and everything with it. But never did I think until I've learned more with Ideal Protein now that that was actually just sick care. We were just kind of covering up the symptoms,
Hmm.
looking at whatever this decline is going to look like kind of thing. But now we can actually look at it as healthcare. What can we do to make things better and get people actually healthy and not just a Band-Aid on top of it? So
And again, you're saying so many gems that you and I have talked about, and I want to highlight those things, right?
for sure.
Inevitable decline,
Yes,
right?
that's a
Talk,
big one.
talk to me
So
about that.
looking at the inevitable decline, that's, when we talk about things being so progressive and everything, that's the biggest thing, is that you just feel like you're giving another medication and then you're going to treat the symptom of that and then a side effect of that and then another one from there. And I don't know, other than changing diet with how we do, there's no medication that's going to like kick you out of diabetes or kick you out from having high blood pressure. It's going to
Correct.
mask symptoms, but you're still going to start getting worse because there's a whole lot of other, metabolically sick problems happening underneath the layers there. So
Absolutely.
I think that's the
So
biggest part.
that's, and yes, and again, that the whole concept of chasing the symptoms instead of treating a cause or a problem. As a chiropractor, that's always been a huge core to our upbringing in chiropractic school and our practice.
Mhm.
But more so now, I'm seeing it being applied to all of healthcare
Mhm.
because of the new research, because of the new literature, because of the new approaches in nutrition, that we're finally starting to get out the word. And
Definitely.
Ideal Protein is certainly right. It's always been at the forefront of therapeutic nutrition. Again, I love
Absolutely.
how you use that term, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
I love that one with it. And Pharmacist itself has actually been kind of a leader in Canada that way too. They're going to be, I think any day now, they'll be releasing the results of a great study they were doing with UBC and 13 different clinics, looking at how they've basically been reversing type 2 diabetes. So I'm like so thrilled to be part of it that way, because we've been doing that for 7 years. It's been absolutely fabulous. So
so yeah, we're going to get into diabetes in just a little bit here. That is going to be our pet disease, if you will, that we're going to address
there you go.
a little bit later today. So that's just amazing, because that's probably something that somebody that's listening or watching our podcast right now has never heard before: reversing diabetes,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
So very excited about that. So I want to shift gears now. I want to get into the meat of the program. When I first approached you to be on the show, I had an ulterior motive, because I think that you represent the background, the knowledge, the training that truly can set Ideal Protein in a place where it needs to be. And I wanted to base, I sent this to you, and I wanted to base our show around this quote. Um, you know, uh, Back in February, late February, March, when the pandemic was hitting and lockdowns were starting and stress was going up, a couple of people in Ideal Protein corporate approached me and said, "Hey, we're trying to do this thing to stay in touch with our dieters. We're going to do these things called Ideal Protein Health Talks. And we'd like to get good information in front of everybody who's out there who might be stuck inside and want some good information. Would you do a health talk for us?" And I said, absolutely. And they knew that the topic that was I was most passionate about is this thing I call the power of the protocol.
Mhm.
And truly, to me, the power of this protocol is more what it does to reset your metabolic health than weight loss,
Mhm.
right?
Weight
And
loss
we're
is
going to
a side
see
effect of it, right?
exactly. We are going to see that the weight loss is truly just another one of the side effects, the beneficial side effects of resetting that metabolic health.
Mhm.
So, to me, and it's been very, very frustrating, but my eyes have fully been opened, especially with our experience over the past 5 years. Um, to me, the most important pandemic that this world faces, both before, during, and after the COVID-19 pandemic, is the pandemic of obesity, metabolic syndrome, and insulin resistance. And one of the most powerful weapons available to fight this pandemic truly is the ideal protein protocol.
I love
Agree or disagree, Melissa?
it. Agree. 100%. It's
Yes.
it's just been amazing that way, right? And it's such a turnkey method to have coaches coaching you. You know, you're following the protocol. You follow the protocol, it's going to work. That's the biggest thing. If you
Yep.
deviate, there's things that are going to sneak back in, but that's where you have us as coaches and pharmacists and chiropractors and doctors, everybody following you with amazing scientific support behind our protocol as well. So I love that you talk about the power of the protocol like that, because it truly is resetting the body from the inside out, and then weight loss happens to happen after that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, and why I bring this up and why this show, as we have been working on it for 2 weeks,
Mhm.
the importance of the show has grown every single day. There's been new information coming out every single day that makes the information that we're presenting here even more and more important. Um, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this to light was there was a study done back in April, and it was published the Journal of the American Medical Association. They studied 5,700 patients that were hospitalized with COVID-19 in the New York City area. And the crazy statistics that we see coming out of this study is that 94% of the patients that were hospitalized in the New York City area with COVID-19, uh, 94% of those patients had at least one chronic health problem. And of those top three, well, actually, 94% had one and 88% had two or more.
Hmm.
Those top three problems happen to be hypertension at 36.6%, obesity at 41.7%, and diabetes at 33.8%. Those top three. Melissa, can you tell me, are those three things related in any way, do you think?
100% related. And I think a lot of it is obviously coming from insulin resistance. That's a big part of it, right? And there's a big correlation between all three of those. Even though you might not have obesity and you have high blood pressure, or maybe you don't have high blood pressure, but you're seeing in the sugars or inflammation, whatever it looks like, all of them are related because of that insulin glucagon ratio being, tip the scales kind of thing in favor of insulin, unfortunately. So they're all related. And I think I'd seen, I don't know if we have it in here or not, but I'd seen another study or something released that they were talking about if and when a vaccine becomes available, it may not even work in our obese population as well, or it may not work as well, is what they say. I don't know if
And
that's
again,
true or not, but
yes. And again, that's why I was saying every single day over the past 2 weeks, the importance of what we've been putting together just has increased exponentially. I saw that same thing. I had actually seen something previously because, vaccines for the flu and similar viruses, we already knew that that's at least 50% less effective in obese patients, and or even less effective than that.
yeah.
So, it does seem like that is our sick care model and our sick care penchant, that everybody is staying home, wearing their mask and socially distancing, which is wonderful. And we got to do that. But they're waiting for the magic vaccine that's going to make it okay.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, this pandemic, more than anything else, has shined such a light
Mm.
on obesity and metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance, and how we cannot hide from that anymore.
Absolutely. That
Um,
metabolic health is so important. And I think that's why when people are doing the protocol, they just feel so good. I have a whole non-scale victory board up on my wall in
yep,
here. I should have showed you that. I'll send you a picture of it later or post it in the comments. But
yep.
the non-scale victories that we hear every day when people start to feel good are just
Mhm.
amazing. That's the part that gets you, right?
It
So
does.
yeah, you can get
And
people
that's what
healthy. That's awesome.
And that's what I always try to get people to say is, when somebody says, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing. Look, you've lost so much weight." I get them to turn it back around and say, "You know what? Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. But I have not felt this good in forever. And it's so much
Whenever.
more about how I feel."
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. I have so much
So,
more energy now. I think that's where I find my extra time, right? Because I actually don't need a lot of
right.
sleep because when I sleep hard and I get it done and I get up and get going again. So
Yeah. No,
yeah.
absolutely. That to me was the surprise. When I did the protocol, I fully expected to lose weight. I did the protocol because I had a patient of mine lose 70 pounds in 6 months
That's amazing.
after I had lectured him about how scared I was about his health and what was going on with him. He disappeared and came back and blew my
Yeah.
mind. He did it at his cardiologist's office.
Yeah.
So I fully expected to lose weight. What
Hmm.
I didn't expect was to get all the energy that I hadn't had for years come back.
Yes.
I didn't expect my gastrointestinal system to clear up, and I didn't deal with any of those symptoms anymore. I
Hmm.
never, ever, ever expected my arthritis pain to go away.
Yeah.
Um, the
Really
other thing too, anxiety and depression and a lot of that stuff my brain came back, and I'll never forget the first morning I woke up with a clear head. So all of these things, that's what got me so fascinated with the power of this protocol.
amazing.
And going down this rabbit hole, and as a coach and a clinic owner, we understand that the thing that is at the core of all of this is insulin resistance, right?
Yeah.
And it's something, insulin resistance is somewhat challenging because to try to relate this to our patients, to try to relate this to our clients in an easy, understandable way, sometimes can be difficult.
For sure.
It is now becoming, though, a buzzword. We're hearing it. They're hearing it in the more and more being brought up. And so one of the people like I said, we're going to spotlight some people that have been very influential on us. And I want to spotlight right now, Dr. Ben Bickman. Dr. Bickman is the foremost researcher in insulin resistance, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as many, many, many people are concerned in the scientific community in the United States. Ben just came out with this book. There it is, Why We Get Sick. When he announced that he was writing his book, I was so excited about it. I had to wait like 8 months for it to actually come out. But I bought it for all of my coaches. It's required reading in my clinic. And I would highly suggest it to anybody who has any of the conditions that we are talking about today. The fascinating part of it is, for those of us in Ideal Protein, I hope that you have seen this pamphlet that was put together by our own Mike CL. Mike
It's
CL, pharmacist extraordinaire, right?
awesome. I've had lots of discussions with Mike about this book because I've actually used a lot of his content in our presentations, which he's full power. He said, yes, get the word out there, sort of thing. And there's great diagrams and looking at, when I eat carbs, what happens to my insulin and what happens to my glucagon and why is that important, right?
Yep.
And when we talk about insulin resistance, and I've been listening to Ben Bickman now since you've recommended him to me, and I love his talks like that because basically you're eating too many carbs and you have this big insulin spike, and over time your cells start to say, you know what, I'm good, like just pass it on, I don't need it anymore. So then your blood sugar spikes more, the pancreas starts to produce more and more as it goes, right? And you start to,
and it's just a vicious cycle,
and it becomes, you get more hungry because then you say you're hypoglycemic. Well, you're not hypoglycemic, you're actually hyperinsulinemic is what I tell people. We need to get the insulin levels down. So
yeah. So I love this quote. Just a couple of quick quotes from Ben. But the reason that our discussion is so relevant, and the reason that Ideal Protein, as all of us coaches and clinic owners understand, that we need to teach more and more and more people about the concept of insulin resistance that underlies so many of the chronic diseases, including weight gain and obesity. Because it is the underlying silent thing that people don't know about. Insulin resistance is the most common disorder where in the United States, we know that 88% of adults are considered metabolically unhealthy because they fail in some category of metabolic syndrome. namely waist circumference, high blood pressure, high blood glucose, or dyslipidemia, which is high triglycerides and low HDL cholesterol. All of those manifestations of metabolic syndrome are all related to insulin resistance. And this is a problem that is so incredibly prevalent around the world. You know, what I found fascinating when I was listening, I was literally listening to this podcast this morning, and I transcribed this part of it. I sent it to you. Again, it's so incredible how things have been coming together. You know, Ben says this book will hopefully change a conversation that a patient and a physician have, with the idea like finding the patient that has hypertension. But because their sugar's normal, they don't think about it as being a metabolic problem, and they just give them an antihypertensive medication, thus just treating a symptom but not the true problem. His hope is that perhaps this book will change that conversation where the clinician sees normal glucose but says, well, they've got elevated blood pressure or any number of problems that we're going to talk about that are related, such as fatty liver disease or infertility. And rather than just giving them a prescription for a drug that will treat the symptom, that both the patient and the clinician will understand and acknowledge, hey, wait, there's a problem that all these problems derive from insulin resistance, and there's a better way to treat insulin resistance than a drug. Even modest lifestyle changes are always more effective than even the best anti-diabetic drug. And he says that with data, and he has all the data behind this. Then the patient is treated better, truly addressing the root problem, which is insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. Can you comment on that?
I love it. 100%, all of it. I've been reading, like I said, reading and listening to him talk the last little while too. And it's so true. When somebody comes in with something for a blood pressure medication, for example, they're not thinking about it as being insulin resistance at all. I don't think, well, maybe the doctor is and just decides they're going to treat this because that's what our standard of care says. But when I look at it now, I go, okay, how quickly can I get you off those medications if we were to change up and use food as our medicine that way? Because I try to explain to them right off the bat that if you have high insulin levels, the insulin that's in the body is telling your kidney to retain the salt and water. So all of a sudden you have that increased pressure, which is causing the high blood pressure in the first place. So you get salt that has a bad rep, right? But it's actually the sugar in the first place causing the high insulin, causing the retention of the salt and water. So it just makes sense, right? When I start explaining it to people and they go, okay, well, yeah, that makes sense then. So
yeah, for this episode, I've got a graphics team that worked a little bit on graphics for us. Very, very excited. Shout out to you guys. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Maria
thank you.
And the gang. You know, and so, yes, that is kind of the idea, at least the basic concept we want people to understand. You know, the standard American diet, which used to look like this pyramid, right? Very heavy, very high in carbohydrates. And I think we talked about that. That's pretty much the standard Canadian diet as well.
Standard Canadian as well. Yeah, exact same thing that way. It's very high carb, low fat. And that's, I tell people we've been teaching it wrong for 50 years. So thus the chronic overconsumption of carbohydrates creates a situation where there's a chronic overproduction of insulin. And that leads to insulin resistance. Correct. Which I've heard a couple of really great people trying to give a good analogy for that. It's kind of like, okay, I'll put it so the men will understand. It's kind of like when your wife is nagging you about those things you were supposed to do, and the louder and louder she gets, the less and less you hear it, right? That's right, yeah.
Or the louder you yell at your kids and they seem to listen to you less and less. That's insulin resistance.
It's true. They've just basically said, I've had enough. I just don't even hear it anymore. So just send
it doesn't matter how loud you yell.
No.
They're not hearing it, right?
Yeah,
it's the same thing with the cells in your body. And so then we translate this into another fantastic graphic that they put together. In the talk that I gave, I nicknamed this the Wheel of Disease. But the bottom line is, if you see in the center, that stands for insulin resistance, or a different term. Another term that I've heard in the literature, specifically from Dr. Phil Maffetone, who's been one of my resources, even all the way from the 80s in both nutrition and triathlon training, carbohydrate intolerance. I really love the term carbohydrate intolerance because I think that our clients, our patients can connect with that a little bit better, right?
Similar
like
to
to
like
say
a gluten intolerance, right? If you were to say you're celiac and I can't
exactly.
tolerate gluten, I'm the same way in that I just can't tolerate carbohydrates. It's that simple for what my body looks like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and so, again, what we kind of see, and we're working it into the new protocol now, everybody has their own individual tolerance to
Hmm.
carbohydrates. But what we're finding is that tolerance for many, especially if you came into the program insulin resistance, your
Hmm.
tolerance is much lower than anybody really expects.
Absolutely. Especially if you're someone who's
Agree?
lost 50, 75, 100 or more pounds like that, chances are you were insulin resistant for a very long time. And you might not ever totally reset it. You might be able to, push what that tolerance looks like, but it's not just about the weight gain. If you were to lose the weight and then look at maintenance and what happens with it, there's so much more because for me, it's instant inflammation. It's, 10, 12 pounds within that first week as soon as I put carbs back in again. My body
Hey,
just does not like them. It's an
so
intolerance.
you told me a great story about the Baker's cyst you have in your knee.
Yeah, it's
Um,
kind of crazy actually.
can
I
you
kind
share
of
that with
called it,
everybody?
yeah, I called it a carb knee for a little while because I had kind of started making the connection that it was, carbohydrate induced basically. And so when I was at soccer one day again, there was another soccer mom who's a physiotherapist. And I was walking along kind of limping because I had just come back from a holiday and I had indulged a little bit more than I should have. But as I was coming back and walking down the aisle, then she'd said, wait a second. She's like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, it's just my carb knee acting up or whatever. She said, no, let me take a look at it. So I go over to her and, lo and behold, she said, you have a Baker's cyst behind your left knee. And she said, let me work on it for a bit. And we were going through and I'm like, don't worry, it'll be gone within 3 days. She's like, Baker's cysts don't leave, dear. And I'm like, no, really, it'll be gone in a couple of days. As soon as I lose my 12 pounds again. She's like, that's not normal. You can't do that. I'm like, absolutely, I can. So I did go in for treatment for a couple of days as it was. And by the third day, because I had gone low carb as well, she's like, I don't know what to tell you. She said, your Baker's cyst is gone. And I'm like, it would come back within a week if I decided to put that bread back in again. That's how like carb sensitive or carb intolerant I am. And that's the biggest thing that shows up is this inflammation for me. So,
Yeah,
so as long as I'm not
100%.
eating them, I don't have a Baker's cyst. And I don't know of anyone else that you talk to that would say their Baker's cyst goes away without some sort of surgery or drainage or something. I'm not even sure what they do for them because I just go low carb. So
Right.
yeah.
And that's it. So again, if we can go back to that illustration and the simple equation that comes up is overconsumption of carbohydrates,
Mm-hmm.
oversecretion of insulin to take care of those carbohydrates. And then that, as we look around this wheel, increases musculoskeletal inflammation. Right.
Mm-hmm.
For me,
Everything
I've
with
had a
it.
chronic swollen ankle for ever since my early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer I stayed low carb and in my maintenance life went low carb, healthy fat,
Mm-hmm.
I realized one day my ankle wasn't swollen anymore. And, I couldn't walk without a limp before. And now I'm running triathlon again.
Yeah, I believe it.
So for me, if I overindulge for a holiday or for what have you, yeah, my
Mm-hmm.
ankle will start talking to me again and I'll have a tough time.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I clean that stuff out of my body, it's smooth sailing from there. And it's
Yeah,
amazing.
definitely. I've had a couple of clients now that have had very severe rheumatoid arthritis, just thinking of inflammation like that, to the point where they had knees replaced. I believe they had hips replaced. And basically were walking with a walker even still. And only, I think this one I was thinking of was like 45. So not very old. I'm
Mhm,
43 now. So I'm thinking that's pretty young
mhm.
still. Um,
Yes.
but I mean, on all these different meds, these injectables, like really expensive medications, these biologicals, they call them,
Mhm.
methotrexate, you name it, all these drugs as it is. Well, she'd only lost about 30 pounds with us. I say only because 30 pounds isn't a huge number, but her 30 pounds, she's out walking 3 and 5Ks now. Like, it's just
Yeah.
amazing to see, like you said, the power of the protocol with reversing that insulin resistance and just getting those carbohydrates out of her system. Just, it was just amazing. I mean, and to be able to see her walk down the aisle as she's coming instead of
Yep.
hobbling with her walker or cane or whatever it was for the day, just amazing.
And such a
So,
huge distinction to make. And I really try to make
mhm,
this distinction with our clients about the power of this protocol.
mhm,
Yes, if you take 30 pounds off of arthritic knees, that's going to create some amount of relief.
for
But
sure.
the biggest part of the relief is actually addressing the cause on the inside and lowering that inflammation.
Mhm.
So, again, for me, my knees became arthritic right before I did the protocol, and I had that really chronic ankle. My knees went away in week 1. And I went
That's
back to my
awesome.
coach because I hadn't paid as much attention during my workshop. And I went back to my coach and I said, okay, I didn't lose enough weight to help my knees that much.
Mhm.
What the heck?
Not with how you're
And
trained to think, right?
no. And then so then
Yeah.
she's like, remember, high insulin, high inflammation,
Mhm.
low insulin, low inflammation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hammered it
And
right home.
that's where COVID is causing such problems, because it's basically this big cytokine inflammation storm that they're saying is what's killing people then, right? So
Yes.
it gets so stuck in the lungs and so much inflammation there that they can't breathe. So
And,
so important
and,
to get metabolically healthy. Now is the time.
and
That's
what
what I
we're
want to say.
seeing. And again, Mike gave a great presentation on that a few weeks ago, actually.
Hmm.
Blew my mind how he was able to bring that into and add it to the chart that we have about insulin and glucagon.
Hmm.
But, again, high carb, high insulin, high inflammation, and
Hmm.
cytokines. People are hearing cytokine storm in the
Hmm.
news, right?
Hmm.
That cytokine storm can be powered by a high insulin level.
Hmm. Definitely. I think I've even noticed a couple of times, because I play soccer as well. I don't just coach it, but I noticed times when I have been having a few more carbs than I should, and I've gone to play exercise or to play soccer, doing some exercise and running. Because as a kid, I used to get exercise-induced asthma, is what I was told it was.
Mm. Right.
Well, now if I've been eating carbs, I actually get like an exercise-induced like mast cell activation syndrome. I don't know how else to call it, because I get so inflamed in the lungs and runny nose and eyes and coughing and stuff. I feel like I'm literally sick, but it's just an
Wow.
allergy, because I can take my Benadryl and Reactin and things to calm it down, and then make sure that I'm going low carb from there, because I literally can't breathe with it. It's pretty crazy. So,
Wow. All right.
yeah.
So
Anyway,
we got a lot. So let's shift
yeah.
our gears. So if we go
Okay.
around that wheel again, um, let's bring the wheel back real quick. If we're looking at that wheel, and we're going to look at probably about 4 or 5 o'clock, it talks about. So let's go around the wheel real quick.
Hmm.
Fat burning, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, different brain dysfunctions, i.e., dementia, Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
anxiety and depression, musculoskeletal inflammation, gastrointestinal inflammation, and polycystic ovarian syndrome. So
Just all the things.
we're going to run around the wheel to about 5 o'clock, and we're going to talk about type 2 diabetes. And it was
Okay.
fascinating you're in one of our initial conversations that we had. You actually said this statement to me
Hmm.
in context of telling me a story about a patient of yours,
Okay.
and literally this phrase I read in my favorite book on diabetes. Uh, and so for me, I think that we need to address this statement. Type 2 diabetes is a chronic degenerative disease with no chance for reversal. True or false, Melissa?
7 years ago, I would have said absolutely true, and now not a chance. That's 100% false. And not saying that it's going to be reversed forever, but we can put it into remission, and we can make it seem like you don't have diabetic symptoms anymore. I think the best quote I had from a client, pardon me, and I've used his case in a couple of different presentations. He 40, I think he was 58, I want to say. He was scheduled for bariatric surgery because nothing else was going to help. He was on 4 different diabetes meds, hypertensions, sleep apnea machine, thyroid, you name
Wow.
it. He had the whole wheel basically, but diabetes being his biggest concern, because he wanted to get that under control. So he came to me, and like we talked about, he left with hope at the end. And by the time he was done, he in his testimonial that I actually had wrote up and presented, he said, "I'm now post-diabetic." And I thought that was the best term. I don't think I mentioned that to you, but he
I
said, like,
love
there's
that term.
pre-diabetes, there's diabetic, diabetes, and now he's post-diabetic. And then from there, I mean, he's been doing amazing with it. And that was a couple of years ago. Blood work's still going fine with it. But he even notices, as soon as you start to put those little bits of carbs back in, it's such a cycle that wants to come back again. So all
Oh,
13 of
absolutely.
his meds anyway were gone within 5 months, 45 pounds. And in his write-up, he says, as confirmed by my doctor, by my blood work, by me not taking any meds or using a sleep apnea machine anymore, I don't have those things anymore. It's just
Yeah.
it's just mind-blowing, right? I just
And
absolutely love it.
the biggest mind-blowing thing you just said to me is that he only lost 45 pounds, because I'm thinking, wow, you know, how overweight must this guy have been? And,
Right.
you know,
45, that was it.
it's important for us to have people understand it's not always, number one, we can have people that are very obese that their body hasn't developed some of those other things yet. We can have somebody that's just overweight and they've developed a lot of those things. In fact, we can have somebody that doesn't even look like they're overweight that has developed type 2 diabetes and other things, all related to insulin resistance. And so there's going to be some individuality as far as insulin resistance goes, and the outward signs, symptoms, and related diseases. But, you know, again, it wasn't the 45 pounds he lost that helped him get off those medications and change those things.
We actually, well, with him even, we had started him not even on the full protocol. We actually started him on just a clean eating, I call it clean eating maintenance, where we start to cut out the grains and potatoes and sugars and things. And we had him off 2 of his meds before he actually started our protocol. And within the month, he was off of those and off of his blood pressure medications because they changed so quickly. It was just amazing. He was a whole new guy. There's a whole new guy.
And that was the thing too, as a non-prescribing practitioner, we hook up with people's primary care physicians as quickly as we can and get authorization if they've got some of these issues. And I usually say to their doctors, you know, I need to do this ahead of time. And then I also need for you to be on call. Your patient may be calling you quicker than you think because
it's not a 3-month checkup. Don't wait for 3 months.
Yeah, their medications may need to be titrated after the first week or 2 because of the metabolic changes. And then after that, the related weight changes. You've seen that?
Well, and if it is somebody that happens to be on insulin as a type 2 diabetic, I actually cut that dose in half the very first day. Because if we're not feeding you as much sugar, you can't have as much insulin because you're actually at risk of going hypoglycemic. And that's when we can have problems with them. Especially with some of these new ones, the new medications that they actually have you pee out a little bit of sugar every day, 100 grams of sugar, not just a little even. So some of those you do have to take very seriously because we don't want you to go too low. That's the big thing as we're looking at prescribing or deprescribing any of these, is that we're looking at patient safety first. We want to make sure that they're covered that way. So for our clinics that don't have, you know, a Melissa who's a prescribing pharmacist or a doctor right on site, that's where our scientific support center can be, you know, their best resource. Or a lot of the time they're actually asking me too. So I'm helpful that way in that I can help guide them. I never give them the full advice saying this is what you have to do, but I say this is the direction I would go. Now, please talk to scientific support and get that support for yourself as well. So you have that to be able to tell the patient then, because they do go sometimes that first week even. So
I know that you provided me with some information on kind of the most common ways that you deprescribe medications, which I'm going to try to put in a form for physicians that we approach for their patients. Just say, hey, also here's an information sheet that will give you suggestions. It's with this protocol on how they can commonly deprescribe their medications in what order, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just perfect. Absolutely. And you've been such a great resource for me. But again, awesome. You know, it's funny because this phrase, chronic degenerative disease with no hope of I started to hear about that. One of the, you know, we talked about people we have in common, people that we, you know, people we look up to, pioneers in low carb keto and addressing these situations. And one of the people that's had a lot of influence in your life, Dr. Sarah Halberg.
Yes, absolutely love her. She's an obesity doctor. And I was first actually introduced to her at an Ideal Protein super weekend, a training weekend. I think it was in Las Vegas around 2015, I want to say, right after her TED Talk had been released. So that's what she's doing here anyway. If anyone has seen it or hasn't seen it yet, I highly recommend it. But basically, she's sitting there going, I have the best job in the world. And she helps people lose weight. And I know you and I have said, like, that's me. I have the best job in the world.
Oh my God.
Because it's getting people healthy. Yeah.
I came across it as I was going down the YouTube rabbit hole, you know, as I'm looking one thing up and it's got suggestions on the side. And, you know, the title is basically Reversing Type 2 Diabetes Through Nutrition. Yeah. And so I clicked on it just for fun. And she walked out on stage and she said that. And in my head, I looked at her and I said, no, you don't. I do. And then she said, I am an obesity doctor. And I said, okay, if she's an obesity doctor and she thinks that she has the best job in the world, she must be a low carb keto obesity doctor. And
Yeah,
sure enough,
absolutely.
boom, there it was, right?
Yeah. And I have recommended her talk to so many people because, like you said, it's called Reversing Type 2 Diabetes, but it also, part of it is actually starts with ignoring the guidelines. And so that's where, I've come into a few people and a couple of physicians where we've had the discussion of, this is not in the guidelines of what it looks like, but we're going to talk about this in a bit of how it is there. But when I was going through all of this anyway, I'm part of the Canadian Clinicians for Therapeutic Nutrition group as well. So there's 2,000 doctors, a few of us are pharmacists, put together anyway, and they are doing monthly webinar talks, and they had Sarah Halberg coming on for one of them. And
Wow.
I honestly felt like I was starstruck. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to listen. And it was a call. Like I actually got to ask her a question, and I said the big thing was like, how many carbohydrates do you recommend in the day, and what's your maximum, and what's your tolerance? So she said 40 grams. If I go more than that, that's it. So that was my time. I got to ask her one question, but after recommending her talk and listening to her talk about her GPS, that's one big one I want to mention. Thinking about your direction of where you're going is your GPS, and knowing your grains, potatoes, and sugars are probably not great for you. So that's where I kind of come back to. My GPS has to lead me back again. So it's just been awesome that way.
So yeah, again, she, especially in the United States, and Jeff Volek and Steve Finney, heroes of mine, especially in the human performance space,
definitely
low carb keto human performance. We all are standing on the huge shoulders of this next guy that I want to bring up, Dr. Tim Noakes. For me, when I stumbled upon Tim Noakes' story, Tim is the foremost exercise physiologist in the entire world, and he has been for many years. The most cited, just one of the most respected. Tim wrote the book, The Lore of Running, that I have up there, which is a huge Bible-looking tome of everything running, including nutrition and science. And Tim, ironically enough, was responsible for creating the first goo product, the first sugar goo that was suggested for runners to use to get through marathons and long races, right? So you've got runners out there who are sucking down sugar the whole time to get them through this race. And Tim was in the forefront of that research, created this product. And his personal story was he was an ultra marathoner himself. And lo and behold, later on in his career, developed type 2 diabetes. Blew him away. He had no idea how that could have happened because he'd been doing everything just perfectly right. And the more he went down the rabbit hole, found out everything he knew about nutrition, health, and human performance was backwards.
It's backwards. Yeah, absolutely. We run so much better on ketones. It's just amazing.
Again, you brought his name up. And so tell me again, I find this fascinating that you.
Yeah. So, well, I'm not sure if it was I think it was within this Canadian Clinicians of Therapeutic Nutrition for Canada, like this anyway. And there's a doctor in there, Dr. Carol Loffelman and Dr. Barbara Allen Bradshaw were kind of the pioneers of this whole thing. And then a pharmacist named Sean McKelvey out of BC. We've been in contact all along because he was a pharmacy pharmacist, and we've connected at a couple of different conferences, presented a lot of the same info, a lot of things. But I believe it was Carol Loffelman had connected us or connected me with Marika Saboros. So she had coordinated on the book that he had up there with Dr. Tim Noakes. And Rob and I were actually listed as one of her very first low carb pharmacists on her low carb map of the world on foodmed.net. So if you look on there, I think there's only 6 pharmacists listed, and we're 2 of them on there. So I think that's a pretty cool thing. And
that's really cool.
Yeah, we're trying to get connected actually because I was recommended, I guess, to be able to do an interview with her at some point. So Marika, if you're listening, we should get on that and chat about it a little bit.
So amazing. And,
yeah, it's awesome.
Dr. Noakes was brought up on all kinds of medical charges for giving advice on ketosis and et cetera, et cetera. And in the process, that's what the Lore of Nutrition is partially about. his trials and tribulations, and proving. He actually went to court and proved his science and the science of everything that we are doing, everything that he is doing, as being scientific truth. And so I hate that he had to go through the persecution, everything that he did. But
and
again,
years of it as well, not just a little
I
while.
can't even imagine. But what an incredible amount so he created the Noakes Foundation, which their sole purpose is basically trying to defeat diabetes around the world, using a low carb nutritional approach. And Diabetes Unpacked, I highly recommend that for any diabetic. That's how I relearned the science of diabetes. And I can't say enough about that. And so because of that, and what's going on, we're seeing all around the world now, finally, we're seeing that diabetes associations are actually having to create position statements and acknowledge the effectiveness and the usefulness of a low-carb therapeutic nutritional approach to diabetes.
I was so excited to see this one. As you can see, it was 2 years ago now when the Australian Diabetes Association had recognized this part of it. And it was just so exciting to start to see it. And we saw it in the UK and Sweden and different places as well, with different diet doctors going through the same thing like that.
And now it's spilled over
now
into
it's here. Yes, finally.
in Canada, right?
Yeah. I think America was first. They were back in 2019. And then Diabetes Canada has now jumped on board this year as well. Unfortunately, though, these things aren't like lit up and, banners flying and everything else, that low carb diets or very low carb diets are effective as treatment, and possibly the most effective, right? You're not seeing the decline of clients once they start doing these things. So, but it's amazing to have that behind us now. And hopefully they start using that in a lot of their teachings and looking at what they're showing new students and that kind of thing too. So it's coming. It's coming. We just have to keep doing the good work.
Things are changing. Well, what I thought was fascinating about the Australian one is it actually says that the position statement draws on the latest evidence and provides practical advice and information for considering a low carbohydrate eating plan. But they had to say that it was developed in response to inquiries from people with diabetes, health professionals, and the general public. There was enough talk about it, enough buzz, and people kept on badgering them to finally look into it. And that's why they presented that. And I do believe that that's how it is happening all over the world.
Yeah. And that's what we're seeing now. It's amazing.
I have great faith in the United States that these changes are going to be a little bit louder. The actual new CEO for the American Diabetic Association, it's her approach, and it has been her approach. And so just a wonderful quote that we put out in there about how it makes so much sense. She says, here's what I do, and it's really pretty simple. Elevated blood sugars happen when you have sugars in your body and you don't have the right amount of insulin taking care of it. I manage the sugars and carbohydrates that turn into sugars. I manage the sugars and the carbohydrates that turn into sugars. Bread is a carbohydrate. Pasta is a carbohydrate. Fruit can be high in carbohydrates. Even with fast food, I can, in a pinch, get a salad or a sandwich and throw away the bun. So start paying attention to sugar and carbohydrate.
100%. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, even 4 grams of carbohydrate make up a teaspoon of sugar. And that's all you're supposed to have in your blood ever. That's how much you need. So if you're eating, even a banana that has 32 grams of carbohydrate in it and you're insulin resistant, well, that's 8 teaspoons of sugar that you now have to process. So when we start looking at those things, if you're going to start adding fruit back in a low carb maintenance, I would honestly just only go with a couple of berries here and there because they have a lot lower glycemic index, meaning they have a lower insulin response, right? So that's where I really try to teach that to people, that there's just so many extra hidden sugars, if you think of it that way, because carbohydrates turn into sugar. That's what your body sees it as, right? I think I mentioned this to you with someone had said to me one time, well, fruit is natural sugar, so it's probably good for you that way. And I said, well, it also causes natural diabetes in the same way then. So I don't know if they were very happy with me, but once they started to see it, they're like, okay, I get this now, right? It just makes sense in what's happening in my body that way. So
And again, it's everybody has their own individual tolerance to carbohydrates, which we really try to figure out now as we're phasing people at maintenance life. It's just a lot lower than they expect. So,
Definitely.
sure. And I have people, they'll make a Greek yogurt with a few berries in it to give them that fruit that they really, really enjoy. We'll throw some nuts in there as well for some healthy fats. What an incredible breakfast they can have. That's what we've got to watch. But yeah, it's not all day.
Definitely.
I also had somebody say to me, well, my husband said any diet that doesn't include fruit can't be healthy for you at all. I say, well, bring your husband in. I'll give him an entire education.
That's right. Yeah. I always ask them to bring people in.
And we don't want people to hear that fruit is bad for you, but fruit is challenging, especially for diabetics, as far as blood sugar control. And fruit stops fat loss during a fat loss program like ours. That's why we don't include it during our program. It's a food that's going to raise your sugar, raise your insulin, and stop fat burning.
Correct. And I go further when they're looking at maintenance like that, especially being here in Canada. We get snow for 4 or 5 months of the year, right? But if you think of what fruit would, yeah, there you go. Not today. Today, I think we're in the high 90s for what Fahrenheit looks like. So it's hot today. But if you think about fruit, though, what we have in the grocery store has been like overgrown basically to include so much sugar. If you think about going to grandma's farm and you pick some berries off the bush once a year, that's how much sugar people should be getting. That's about it. It shouldn't be giant mangoes or giant watermelons anytime they want, and anytime every single day like that. That's not the healthy part.
Right.
And I do want to touch on too, I mean, when we're talking about diabetes being able to be put into remission like that, I'm not putting the disease in light or anything like that. I'm not saying it is absolutely a chronic degenerative disease that causes a lot of problems and deaths and morbidities and everything else with them. But we now know that there's another option. I think that's the biggest thing to get out to people is that we can manage it better. It's not managed just with medications. We can manage it with food, and we can help you healthy that way.
Well, again, that's very important. You and I have talked about this, the importance of the understanding of managing it properly, or let's call it this way, successfully managing it, right?
Correct. Yes.
You're not being, is successful management watching the continual progression of your disease and adding more and more and more medications to it.
Right. Actually, I had a new client about a month ago here, and she said she was put on metformin. So it's a pretty standard one for people to go on right off the bat to start with medications anyway. And she said the nurse that she was talking with said, we'll put you on this. And by the time your kidneys start to fail, then we'll make sure that you're on this. And she went, wait a minute. And when my kidneys fail, she's like, I don't want my kidneys to fail. Is there something else I can do? And I mean, she actually ended up trying to come in and do the program, and has been doing absolutely amazing now. And she can't believe that we actually got her off some of those metformin pills already, and her blood sugars have been absolutely stable in that 4 to 7 range that we have. You guys have a different number. Sorry, you're under 100 something.
Around 100. Yeah.
So we want that teaspoon of sugar, basically that 4 to 7. That's all we want in there. So, but yeah, doing fabulous with it. Just a couple of weeks in, already coming off of some of those medications. So,
all right. So we are getting pushed for time.
Oh, yes.
I do want to go back then and say, you know what? We talked about one spoke of this wheel. It is my desire and goal that I get you on more than one show.
For sure.
And that we address some other spokes of this wheel in the near future, because it is very, very important. All those different discussions that we're going to have. So I did want to move forward because the importance of our show got boosted last night when a friend of mine, Maria, passed on to me a video that, it's kind of one of those things that once you see, you can't unsee. And I sent this video to you, and we talked about how incredibly poignant and to the point it was.
Definitely. Just straight talking right to what we need to hear kind of thing. It was amazing.
So Bill Maher, people, if you do have seen him and know him, he is a cut to the chase kind of guy, right? No bones about it. And whether you enjoy his humor or not, some of the things he says really just hits people hard and hits home. The point of this video, which he called the Quarantine 15, and I would certainly suggest that you look that up on YouTube or Facebook so that you watch it, the most poignant 5 minutes that I've seen in the past 6 months of COVID. His bottom line is one of the bottom lines that we keep talking about is the discussion that we just had about obesity, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and its importance in your ability to fight the COVID-19 virus. The difference between being hospitalized, possibly dying. And so what he found was that there's the city of Huntington, I believe it's Huntington, Connecticut, where officials actually told their town of 200,000 people, look, here's the best approach we think to quarantining and fighting this virus. It's improve your metabolic health, improve your obesity. As the person who was presenting it to the city said, with COVID-19, you're twice as likely to have a poor outcome if you're obese. Bill went on to show other things, and the UK is right on top of this, right? Because their prime minister got it, and he understands the connection now. So Public Health England put out this study that shows excess weight can increase the risk of seriousness of illness and death from COVID-19. People with a BMI of 35 to 40, their risk of death from COVID-19 increases by 40%. People with a BMI over 40, 90%. Absolutely mind-blowing.
It is.
In fact, he went on to say right after this that even being mildly obese makes it 5 times more likely that catching the virus will land you in the ICU.
I would guess that mildly obese would be that BMI of 30 and up would be something like that, because he talked about 35 to 40 from there, but 30 and up is considered obese. 30
to 35.
So,
I believe that's what he's referring to.
Yeah.
Other quotes that I pulled from there, he said, I don't think that it's a coincidence that the countries with the lowest rates of obesity have had the fewest COVID deaths. Maybe China isn't hiding all of their COVID deaths. Maybe their secret is that their obesity rate is actually 6%, which just blew my absolute mind.
Wow.
Whereas ours is up to 42%.
Mm-hmm. Well, that could be it. I don't know.
His further point was, look, obesity was already killing us slowly, but now you mix it with COVID and it kills you fast. And he said, you can scream all you want at me for saying that, but it won't change the scientific truth of that. Again, after he goes into, and I thought it was a very thought-provoking, well-done video that covered a lot of bases. And
he really did, just really straight to the point. Like, this is the way it is. This is what we need to change, and we need to do it. COVID or not, we need to do it. But
I tell you, Bill, we're with you. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Melissa would love to have a conversation with you. Ideal Protein as a company, we need to position ourselves in this spot to truly be one of the most potent weapons to help people improve their metabolic health, improve their chances, as we're going to be living alongside this virus now for quite a while, right? It's not just going to disappear. So, truly, I kind of feel like you and I agreed. I love this quote, and I use this all the time in my clinic, that truly we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And I've applied this all the way through the Ideal Protein program in our office, nutrition. We need to look at nutrition differently, and the world is starting to get that message, because the experiment with the pyramid and the guidelines that we were given 40 years ago have been a failed experiment. They've only failed if we don't learn from it.
That's right. Yeah. The last 7 years, I think that we've done pretty well here, but I mean, it's been a lot of work to get to that point too. But I figure every client that I have in here, it's making a difference in their lives. And then it makes a difference because they're going to hopefully teach their kids something different. There's so much to it that way. And I mean, I've helped more than 1,000 clients now. So it's been fabulous. What more can you want? I have the best job, just like Sarah Helberg says.
You do. Yes, we all do. And that's why we get up early in the morning. We go to bed late at night. And we are so fulfilled in the middle. Yeah. I thank God for the blessing that he gave me to be able to do this. The opportunity to meet incredible people like yourself.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me. I've been so excited waiting for this to come. It's been great.
I want to have you on more than once. I think you have pegged show. You're a show number 7, lucky number
Yes,
7,
lucky
right?
7 today. Yes.
And then your sports number was 13. So you're
It was
saying
13. That's right.
I'm
So
going to
lucky
hold you to
13. I'll be
that.
back again.
I am going to hold you to that if I don't get you sooner.
Sounds good. I'm happy to help out, or if you need a couple questions answered, I'm always around. So
Oh, you know what?
yeah, I love it.
Unfortunately, you're going to be sad you said that because
You have me on
I'm
speed
going to
dial.
ask. Yep, absolutely.
There you
All right.
go.
Thank you so
Thanks so
much.
much. Yes.
All right. So thank you for hanging with us. I know this is an exceptionally long episode, but it's just like I said, I feel like it's the most important episode that I have ever produced. God might have put me in the position here and brought me up over the past couple of months so that we could put together this episode. I want to thank everybody who was involved in helping me put together this episode and encouraging me to do it. All the way down to, I needed to shout out one of my clients, Leah. Thank you so much, Leah, for my noiseless mouse that you have given me to use for the show so the annoying clicking doesn't come through the microphone. And shout out to Maria and my graphics and everybody. Thank you so much. So I need to show you next episode. Oh my God. Now that I've got a taste of going international, we're going all the way around the world. My next guest is going to be Dean Kilby. Oh my God, I'm so excited about this. And I say this at the end of every show, that I'm so excited about the next person, but truly I've met and I am meeting the most incredible people on this journey. Dean Kilby was responsible or part of it. He was part of a team that was responsible for bringing the Ideal Protein program to Australia. He is he is a biophenomenological approach to vitality, longevity, and being well. He's I believe he's part owner of the Wine Doctor, a wine that is supposed to improve your longevity. I've got to talk to him about that. But he is a very, very dynamic clinic manager. Simpler Health, I believe, is his clinic. He transforms lives in Australia using the Ideal Protein protocol, and his science knowledge and background and everything that he does, I'm sure is going to be tremendous. So join us in 2 weeks. I'm trying to stay on our 2-week episode as far as releasing them. So it'll be Thursday, I believe the 20th, that I'll be putting out Dean's. Dean actually knows Melissa. Melissa met Dean, and that seems to be kind of how the show is going, connecting these dots. At one point, I was messaging Melissa in Alberta, Canada, and Dean in Australia. It was like 1:30 a.m. for him the very next day. So this is going to be so cool. As always, please like, subscribe, share, spread the news. Please push this out. Help me on iTunes and Spotify, please. If you enjoyed this, if you see value in this, please go to iTunes, find the Life Possible podcast, subscribe, download the episodes, spread it to your friends. It's going to help me. I would love to produce even better shows, more technologically advanced shows. I'd love to have Melissa on and other people on a more regular basis and be able to juggle many different streams. So, if I can land some sponsorships, the best way to do that is more views and more listens and more subscriptions on iTunes. So thank you so very, very much, everybody. And I can't wait to do the next one.